Good day! Today we will discuss the third learning module from the course The Teacher and the School Curriculum, which covers the topic of philosophical foundation. So for our discussion in this lesson, we will divide our discussion into two sessions. So for our discussion for today, we will tackle the four major philosophical viewpoints, which is idealism, realism, pragmatism, and existentialism. So for our second session of discussion, we will tackle about other educational philosophies that covers perennialism, progressivism, essentialism, and reconstructionism. But before that, let us know first our objective. So at the end of the discussion, you will be able to discuss how the different foundations of curriculum have shaped the current conceptions in curriculum, and you will be able to gather information on how a school develops its curriculum to enrich teaching practice. So for the introduction, this learning packet will deal on the discussion of the philosophical foundations of the curriculum. So philosophical study assists us in dealing with our individual systems of convictions and values. So in other words, how we perceive and define the world around us. Since philosophical problems have always affected society and learning institutions, it is important to research education philosophy in terms of curriculum growth. So essentially, an educational ideology affects our educational preferences and alternatives and ultimately defines them. So administrators, teachers, or educators must develop principles which are considered essential in preparing, implementing, and evaluating a school curriculum. So as we have discussed about curriculum, its nature, components, etc. in our previous discussion, we will now discuss the first major foundation of curriculum, the philosophical foundations. So philosophy is one of the main curriculum pillars. In this lesson, we will tackle some various educational ideologies that can greatly affect curriculum decisions. So the philosophical foundations of curriculum, in which philosophy provides educators, teachers, and curriculum makers with framework for planning, implementing, and evaluating curriculum in schools. So it helps in answering what schools are for, what subjects are important, and how students should learn, and what materials and methods should be used. So philosophy plays a vital role in education as it focuses on the ideas about the nature of human beings, social values, and purpose of education. So it can largely influence the views of the learners and of various learning activities. So in decision making, philosophy provides the starting point for the succeeding decision making. Furthermore, as what have been stated by John Dewey, he looks at education as a way of life, a laboratory in which philosophy becomes complete and is tested. On the other hand, Ralph Tyler's framework shows that philosophy is one of the 5 criteria in selecting educational purposes. So furthermore, the philosophical basis of the curriculum planner, implementer, and evaluator mirrors his or her life experiences, common beliefs, social or economic background, and education. So I have here the framework of Ralph Tyler about his view about philosophy in relation to school purposes. So his model is one of the best known models for curriculum development. So according to Tyler, curriculum planners should identify school or general objectives by gathering data from 3 sources. These are the learners, the contemporary life outside the school, and the subject matter itself. So what purposes should the school attain? So according to Ralph Tyler, the first is the studies of learners. So studies of the learners themselves as a source of the educational objectives. Next, we have the suggestions about the objectives from the subject specialist. Next, we have the studies of contemporary life outside the school, and then we have the use of a psychology of learning in selecting objectives, and lastly, we have the use of philosophy in selecting educational objectives. So, in here, we can infer that Tyler's model involves the active participation of the students. Now, let us look at the following educational philosophies and how these can relate to curriculum. So first, we have the first major philosophical viewpoint, which is the idealism. So the idealism doctrine suggests that matter is an illusion and that reality is mental. So this stresses moral and spiritual truth as the world's primary reason and views fundamental principles as pure, eternal, and universal. So idealism is the oldest philosophy. So according to this philosophy, the truth is eternal in the world of matter is imperfect and constantly changing. So if we were going to apply this philosophy in education, what should be the role of the teachers and curriculum in education? So let us see. Teachers would obviously serve as role models for lasting values, so the school must be highly organized and only proposals that reflect positive qualities that can be promoted. Therefore, the materials used for education centered on broad ideas, especially those contained in major literary and or scriptural works. So since idealism is based on specific ideas and principles, it is not solely based to the values of those who are only experimenting from various disciplines. So the teacher here is the supreme role, the guide, the role model, who was knowledgeable of the content, who likes to teach, and lastly, knows his or her students. So the school in this philosophy should encourage character development, self-realization, preservation of culture, and the like. Next educational philosophy we will tackle is realism. But before that, let us look on who are the most renowned idealist philosophers. So we have Plato, we have Hegel, Spinoza, Leibniz, Immanuel Kant, Schopenhauer, and Descartes. These philosophers are the most famous idealist philosophers. Now, let us move on the second philosophy, which is the realism. So, in here, realistic proponents interpret the universe with respect to objects and matter. So they think human behavior is sensible when it is in accordance with nature's laws and governed by social laws. So in here, objects and matter exist independently. So it emphasizes the properties of reality in general. So furthermore, the main task of the teacher, therefore, is to teach the learners the knowledge of the world in which they live. So realists emphasize too that education should represent enduring and lifelong ideals that have been passed down over centuries, only so that the study of individual disciplines does not interfere. So realists deem education as a matter of reality. So it prepares the learners for real and practical life. So like the realists highlighted also the importance of lifelong ideals that have been transferred over centuries. Moreover, apparently, the realists regard the expert as the source and the authority for determining the curriculum, as opposed to the idealists who consider classics to be ideal subject matter for study. So moreover, realists find the experts, for example, the curriculum planners and the teachers, as the source of information and authority for determining curriculum that will allow the learners to have a complete knowledge and understanding about the society, the human nature, the motives, and the like. So we have here the famous realist philosophers, which includes Aristotle, Pestalozzi, Comenius, Hobbes, Montessori, Herbart, and John Locke. Next, we have another major philosophical viewpoint, which is the pragmatism. So pragmatism puts a significant emphasis on improvements, systems, and uncertainty, as it implies that the meaning of a concept lies in its actual effects as opposed to conventional ideologies, namely idealism. So real implications are connected with the purposes of teaching and learning, which focus on practical aspects. That is according to Nash, 1995. So in contrast to the aforementioned philosophies, pragmatism emphasizes the priority of action and experience over abstract or fixed principles, as opposed to the concepts of idealism. Moreover, pragmatists say that learning takes place as the person engages in environmental transactions. So in this sense, any values and ideas currently upheld would be considered timely, as further social development should refine or alter them. So pragmatism in education focuses on practical teaching. So it entails long-term activities and provided lessons about life and growth. So the essence of transition for improvements in this philosophy are emphasized. So one good example is the notion that the earth was flat, which was subsequently disproved by scientific research across the time. Another is in pragmatism, to assume that the perceived world is unchanging, or what we call the idealism, and hereditary in realism, and disregard social and or perceptive adjustment, is to the detriment of the welfare of children overall and their growth. So for pragmatists, to perceive that the world is unchanging, hereditary, and away from social and perceptive adjustments, there is a great possibility that the welfare and growth of the child will be harmed. Lastly, the curriculum should be planned according to the pragmatist, so that the student can think critically instead of thinking. Therefore, teaching should be more exploratory than explanatory in nature. So the curriculum, according to this philosophy, does not focus only to the subject matter and the teachers, but rather seeks to enter the life of the student. So the role of the teaching with contextualization is crucial for students to broaden their horizons and provide learning experiences relevant to the changing world. I have here the famous pragmatism philosophers, which entails John Dewey, William James, and Charles Peirce. Last for our discussion for today is the existentialism. So this theory argues that outside human beings, there are no ideals, and therefore implies that people should be able to choose and instead to take responsibility for the consequences of these choices. So this philosophy highlights individual existence, freedom, and choice. So thus, existentialist believes that the world and life have no meaning unless the human or the people give meaning to them. Moreover, in existentialism point of view, in an existentialist point of view, students should be granted the right to choose what to learn in a variety of circumstances. So this stresses that education must concentrate on the views and emotions of the individual, so that personal reactions or responses to life circumstances can be understood. So according to this theory, every individual is unique. So hence in education, students have the freedom to choose. So in here, teachers are like consulting students on how they will learn. So the curriculum, therefore, gives importance to self-based learning, and teachers act as the facilitators. So the essence and existentialism of education should be decided to a large extent by the learner. Individual students should not be pushed into predetermined study programs. So existentialism in education promotes hands-on, minds-on, hearts-on learning and not spoon-feeding. So let the students define their essence and discover the essence of a thing. Furthermore, the existentialistic curriculum should therefore consist of interactions and subjects that are conducive to philosophical discussion and decisions, incorporating self-expressive practices, studies, and media that reflect emotions and observation. So students should be valued and assisted, and teachers has a regulatory function. So in this philosophy, the curriculum provide better learning experiences and opportunities for students to search for personal significance. So stressing the learner's personal needs and interests are given importance. So all in all, existentialism focuses on the individual. It is not a logical theory, but one that can be felt as an attitude or mood. So in this educational philosophy, awareness, anxiety, choice take on special meaning. It revolts against the traditional philosophical stance, and it is a way of life which involves one's total self in complete seriousness about the self. So as what we have discussed a while ago, existentialism values the choices of every individual. So in here, you make the choice, even though choice is a choice. Next, you must consider the alternatives. Also, you must be aware of what the alternatives can do or lead to, because you are responsible for your choice. And lastly, you must take the choice as though it were for all humankind. So as we discussed this last major philosophical viewpoint, I have here the most renowned existentialist philosophers rather. We have Kierkegaard, Sartre, and Nietzsche. So as we discussed the four major philosophies deemed for curriculum, for our next discussion, let us examine the implications of some more educational philosophies that entails perennialism, essentialism, progressivism, and reconstructionism. So I hope you learned something from me. Let us see each other for our next session. Thank you for listening.